why franchise?
So, the funny thing is the answer is actually not, it can't be found in a business book or in an MBA course. It can't be found in a financial document or financial disclosure. The answer literally was about my life. I've been in the fitness industry for 20 years, almost 20 years now. And I thought, like, what's the exit ramp here? Like, how does this end?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Masters in Fitness Business Podcast, where you get to stand on the shoulders of giants. And today I have a giant coming to you from the great city of Boston.
That's awesome.
Let's do that again.
You got to keep that in. Are you going to have a blooper reel at the end of the year?
Yeah. Shoot. All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Masters in Fitness Business Podcast, where you get to stand on the shoulders of giants. And today I have a giant coming to you from the great city of Boston, Massachusetts. I have my brother from Wakanda, Micah Logan, on the show.
That's right.
Now, and Micah he's a businessman, plain and simple, and he loves fitness, but he is a businessman first. And he was running, I first met Micah, years ago, through the podcast. He was running Next Level Fitness in Boston. And since then, he's taken it to a franchise and changed the name to Meld. And so Meld is now a franchise. So we're going to talk about why the name changed, why did he want to take it to the franchise, and everything that was involved from taking his single location in downtown Boston to a franchise that you can be a part of. So Micah, welcome to the show.
Jim, it is always a pleasure to see you and hear from you, my brother. I mean, it is amazing how, our relationship started. I was listening to your podcast, and you just had one one giant after another on your podcast. And I was like, oh man, I just have to tell this dude. I didn't know who you were at the time. I was like, I got to tell this dude just how good this content is, So I was just like, he's probably not going to respond. I just emailed you, and I think you responded the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was just like, dude, I got to say something, because I know that when people have podcasts, no one tells them how, all the time, how good their content is. But it was, man, the stuff that you were bringing to the table was amazing. But it's good to be with you again, talking about Meld.
Yeah, it's always good to be with you, man. And I appreciate you saying that about the podcast, because you're right. You do all this work, and it's nice to, get an attaboy every once in a while. So we met through the podcast, and then the first time we met was at the STS down in Atlanta in the ATL, and we got to know each other quite well and became friends. And then we we roomed together at the next STS in Bethlehem at that casino.
We did. I had to. If Jim is a huge dude, so the amount of time it takes him to CBD oil up before he goes to bed is hysterical. He just has jars of the stuff. It's just like, Jim, hurry up and do your back so I can turn off this light.
Yeah, but you were in bed. I think I took a picture of it. You're in bed. You had your phone. You had your tablet. You had your computer, and you had this super station going, doing business, in your bed, at 10 o'clock at night.
I do remember that picture. I think you said something like it was the NASA space station or something. And what's funny is you work so much that you don't even realize how insane you are. And so when you took that picture, I'm like, all right, this looks a little insane. And I'm in bed and I have all this stuff around me. I'm like, maybe I should go to bed too. So it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that STS is Rick Mayo, who is a mentor of both of ours. Yep. And he's the first guy that I know personally that took his gym concept to franchise. And now you're the second guy I know. So we
Mm.
were talking before we recorded, and I was calling you the Black Rick Mayo, and then you had a funny story about that.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Rick and I were actually born on the same day. Um, and so Rick, the last couple of years, Rick has he texted me on November 17th, and he's just like, what's up, brother? HBD. And I'm just like, dude, like, you have no idea. Like, but the funny thing is, like, we think a lot alike, just my observations of how he works and how he thinks about business in general, and doesn't take himself too seriously. But like, this dude is like always the smartest dude in the room, but like, he's just so
Hmm.
chill, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but there's a lot of our aspects of our personality alike, and it is fun, man. And to be in franchising, like, even as a black man, right now, there's not that many franchisors that are minority in general
Hmm.
in the
Yeah.
US. So this is really an interesting journey for me in many ways. And maybe it wouldn't be too far off to say that I'm probably one of, you can count on one hand, minority franchises in the fitness industry. I mean, if there's even that many. So, it's a new challenge, and it's an interesting, it's a unique opportunity, I think.
That's awesome, man. Well, congratulations, and I wish you all the luck in the world, and go crush it, man. So tell me, and thanks for being a trailblazer, leading the way. So I'm sure it's going to be the first of many. So tell me, what was your thinking process? Why franchise? Why did you go from the location? Because you were doing pretty well. Because your location, I mean, it's easy to franchise that model because you have a small studio. It's kind of owner operator model. Not a tremendous amount of staff, so payroll is down. Your overhead is low because you don't have a lot of rent. So I'm answering your question for you. So why franchise?
So, the funny thing is, the answer is actually not, it's not, it can't be found in a business book or in an MBA course. It can't be found in a financial document or financial disclosure. The answer literally was about my life. I've been in the fitness industry for 20 years, almost 20 years now. And I thought, like, what's the exit ramp here? Like, how does this end? At what point am I going to walk away? Am I going to walk away? And if I do walk away, how in the world is that going to happen? And how am I going to get the most bang for my buck walking away? So it actually was more of a realization about, you know, I wouldn't say that I'm closer to the end than the beginning, but I'm certainly down the road. And so I'm thinking, like, at what point do I start considering exit strategies when it comes to my career, or how the next generation or evolution of what I do is going to play a part in my life? And so I thought about a few things. So I thought about, okay, well, I can open up more corporate locations and use that as a multiplier. So I could open up, second, third, fourth, at the time, next level fitness location, these micro studios in town, and I can just make as much money as I want. And in one of our STS meetings in Atlanta, one of the Tim Fulton, one of the guest speakers
Mhm.
there, had talked about one of the ways that you end it all in the business realm is you just make as much money as you can, and then you close your doors, right? As opposed to, like, which is what most like sole proprietors do, like, who are like plumbers or electricians. They just make as much money as they can, and then they may not even sell their business. They just stop and they just
Mhm.
retire, and they just don't take on any more customers. And so that was an option. But then I started thinking about brand awareness. I'm like, you know what? I built a pretty strong brand here. And I think that what I would do would work in other communities. And then I started thinking about one other piece, which is that I grew up in one of the poorest towns in Boston. Here I am. I started from the ground up. I have a family now, two kids. I'm married. We have a good life. Why shouldn't I show other people how to do this for themselves? And so that actually became both a passion of mine, and it became an ideal way to even expand the business as well. And so the best opportunity to do that was franchising, because I got to, it's the ability to scale using other people's money. My concept that I thought was already efficient, that I had attuned to an efficient machine, and that I had operated for 6 years. So like at that location. So it was a unique opportunity to combine both three things: my exit, my desire to help people in business and show them like a path, and also to scale the business. When I say exit at this point, I kind of re-strategize. So like it was more like not about like how am I leaving, but how can I grow this so that I'm not every day working in the business or doing this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? So that was kind of like a consideration.
Got it. That's interesting. So the franchising was kind of twofold. It was an exit strategy and also a way for you to help other people out in the same situation, because there's tons of people that, would like to have their own studio and some financial freedom and things like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And frankly, not even about like there's multipliers. So brands that are associated with franchises have higher multipliers than mom and pop stores. It's just how it works. And mainly because once you create a brand that has strength behind it, like from a franchise system, it just becomes you get more recognition from the general public, which means that investors are going to be more likely to like look at it and say, this is a brand that I can invest in. So there's a lot of long-term business strategies surrounding why one would franchise, including like an increase in multiplier when it comes to selling. And that's the case is not even just for the franchise company, for a single unit operator. So like if you're in like St. Louis and you have a Meld in St. Louis, you're more likely to get a higher multiple if you're part of a franchise system as an individual who wants to go into business and eventually kind of come out. So, there's that appealing part of that too,
Yeah. So when you talk about, because I remember the talk with Tim Fulton, I actually had him on the show right after that, talking about the exit strategies. So when you talk about multiplier, can you explain that to the listeners, what you mean by that?
Sure. So a multiplier is so often any business that is going to try to sell will receive a valuation from someone who's trying to buy it. And that individual will kind of basically meet with the person that they're looking to buy the business from. They'll look at how the business operates, how it runs. They'll see if there's any operations manuals surrounding the business, how easy it is to operate. They'll look at how much cash flow is going through the business and how the business is operating. And there's multiple ways to value a business, but there's also multiple ways that a multiplier works in the business. So some investors will give you a multiplier on what's called EBITDA, right? So earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And so that allows you to get a sense of essentially gross net revenue, right? Like before interest and taxes come out, they add that stuff back in. It's kind of added back in instead of being taken out of the net. So let's say you had a loan, a business loan on your business, right? So let's say your taxes are, let's say that at the end of the year, you're making like 300,000. Of that 300,000, you would have paid, let's call it 100,000 in taxes. And let's say that you had a loan in addition to that for $50,000 that you're paying per year. So your net revenue, we would call it, would be 150,000. It'd be the 300,000 after all expenses were paid, minus the 100,000 in taxes and the 50,000 in loans. So an EBITDA multiple, they add that back in to your net after expenses are paid, because those things can be controlled by the person who's buying your business, right? So they may not have a loan that they need to service, the debt that they need to service after your net revenue. They may not, they may be able to have a different tax strategy, which affords them a little higher net revenue. So they add that stuff back into that net number, and then they give you a multiple based off of that original 300,000 before the loan, interest, and taxes, depreciation, that kind of stuff. So that's one way that you get your business sold. A second way is free cash flow. How much cash flow you have after everything is paid. And there is a formula for that. I'll spare the details on that. So basically, free cash flow is how much cash you have to spend after expenses are paid and other things are taken into consideration. And so there's a multiple on that one as well. And so that's kind of how your business is valued. And so what they do is they come in and they say, okay, I'm going to pay you 2 times your EBITDA or 2 times your free cash flow. So if it's 300,000, then they might say, okay, well, I'm going to give you 600,000 for your business, right? However, if you're part of a brand, like a franchise, or you have a cluster and there's actually good numbers there, that multiple goes up. It climbs higher slightly. So it might turn from a 2 times multiple if you're a mom and pop shop to like 6 times, right? Or 7 times a multiple. And so instead of getting 600,000, you're now looking at $2.1 million as a valuation for your business, as opposed to the 300,000 originally, because of that multiple has changed. So depending on how it may cost you more to get into a franchise business or business like that. However, it does change your multiple when someone's trying to come in to buy a business.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very thorough explanation. But basically, the bottom line is what other people say your business is worth if you're trying to sell it or bring in investors or anything like that.
That's right. Imagine if we were the ones that could dictate how much our business is worth. Everyone's business would be worth $1 million.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, when the stakes are high and people are investing a lot of money, that's not the case.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's a great business. I love it. Okay. But can I make money in it?
Exactly. That's the bottom line. And then, most people are trying to look, if you're buying a franchise, they're looking for like a quarter of their initial investment per year, starting with the first year, to get the money back,
Yeah. All right. So walk us through, okay. So you've got, your Next Level Fitness single location. I think you had 2 locations, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And then, so what is the process that you have to do to take it from 2 locations to a franchise?
Yeah. So you first have to decide that franchising is for you, which is a whole thing, because associated with franchising is going to be immense cost to you. There are lawyers involved, because you have to essentially become regulated. You have to subject yourself to regulation by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. So you have to put together basically a pro forma, which is what's called a franchise disclosure document, which you have to hire a franchise lawyer to do, to put together for you. That franchise disclosure document, specifically, what it does is it allows a person who's buying a franchise compare multiple opportunities based off of the same information. So in that federal document, there are 23 items that a person who is buying a franchise would look at to see if the opportunity is for them. And so whether you're buying a fitness franchise or a Dunkin' Donuts or something, all those items are the same. So the metrics and the information in them are different, but the items themselves are the same. And this just allows a person to, for instance, if I want to try to figure out between an Orange Theory, a Meld Fitness, and a 9-round, they can compare each situation and see which one kind of works for them the greatest.
So you're comparing apples to apples.
Comparing apples to apples. And so
Gotcha.
the federal government makes all people who are interested in franchising put together this franchise disclosure document for individuals who are buying a franchise. So in order to be considered a franchise, you need to meet 3 things. Number 1, you have to have an FDD. Number 2, you have to have an operating manual. And number 3, you have to receive more than $500 in exchange for someone buying your system, basically. And if you do those 3 things, you're technically considered a franchise by the federal government, which means that you are subject to federal regulation at that point.
Okay. So that sounds involved and expensive.
It's very expensive. So, Jim, like, you often have individuals on the show who are in the fitness business. However, not every fitness business owner, as you know, operates using an operations manual. So not everyone has put together a manual specifically bolt to bolt. How do you run this business from turning on the light switch to turning off the light switch at the end of the day, and then everything in between? Um, that is required if you're a franchisor, to make sure that the person who's buying your franchise has a way that they can actually operate your franchise without you being around. Um, so that process alone can be cost anywhere between 30 and 50,000 to have somebody write your operations manual. That's just the operations manual. And then doing the FDD can cost between 30 and 50,000 just for the FDD. So like you're already like 60 to 100K into this before you even have sold one franchise, you know?
Wow. And what's the timeline on something like that?
So it depends. The FDD could be written by like by a franchise attorney in maybe about 30 to 45 days, kind of turn around, depending on how busy they are. And then an operations manual may take longer, because if you're using an operations manual company to write that for you, there might be like a lot of back and forth, some interviews, some things that you have to write so they can get it right. That's a lot. I believe that the operations manual is actually more involved, as you can imagine, than just putting together like a franchise document. But like the FTD itself is like but everyone's different, but around 200. Think 200 pages of agreements and things to sign and stuff like that. It's in depth.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
It is like it is the financial equivalent of like a root canal. That's how much fun it is.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't sound like there's anything sexy or fun about that at all.
No. And so that's the thing. Like that's part of the franchise process. Like if you're thinking about franchising your concept, you got to think like, okay, do I have the capital to go through this process? Number one. Number two, do I have the patience to go through this? Like, could I apply $100,000 to a new location to make, 400,000? You know what I mean? Like, or am I willing to spend $100,000 to not even make my first $100,000 in franchise fees for like 3 years? you know what I'm saying? But so like, that's like a consideration that an individual who's thinking about this would have to make. And me too.
So. Well, and I think you even got to take a step back. I think you got to have kind of a working business concept before you even think about franchising. So obviously you had a successful concept going with Next Level Fitness, with 2 locations before you even considered taking it to a franchise. It's not like you were, training at a big box gym and like, you know what, I'm just going to create a franchise.
Yeah, that's not going to work out well because you haven't proven the concept. You have to show that you can make money in your concept. No one is going to buy a franchise that doesn't make money or doesn't make dollars to cents. And the federal government, so from what I understand, and I'm new in franchising, but like decades ago, people were doing just that. Like they were creating franchise concepts out of the air and basically promising people that they can make money and franchising. They would spend the money creating these documents. They would flip a franchise to someone, collect all the franchise fees. No one would ever get support, never open. And the thing was a shell. It was like a shell game. But now, times have changed, right? It takes the government a while, but once they wise up, things change. And so now, like the government kind of caught up, and now there's a lot of rules when it comes to franchising about what you can and cannot say as a franchisor, what you can and cannot do, and what you have to include so that a person makes a good decision. And like it's not for the faint of heart, the process.
Yeah, good to know what you're getting up for, and decide if this is for you or not. All right, so you went through all of that, and then what's the next step once you get all of that? And that doesn't even count like coming up with the name, the logo, the branding. Take us through that for you? I mean, because you changed everything. You did a complete rebrand, name change. So take us through that.
It's funny because if you think you're going to franchise Jim's Fitness, think again. Like it's just not going to happen, because when you're going through the branding process, or in our case, rebranding, Jim, I branded once in my entire, like in terms of the name. Like I started my business, started the company, it was local for almost 2 decades, right? Like, and it's just operating. Um, but now I'm talking about starting a franchise that's going to go national. And so the stakes are much higher. And like you have to think outside the box. If I'm opening a location in Missouri and I have a franchisee who wants to buying the system, they're entitled to a certain level of protection, meaning that if they used your name to operate their business, that they're not going to be sued by Jim's Fitness down the street or Next Level Fitness down the street because you have their name, right? And they may have actually already opened Jim's Fitness 3 years ago that you were unaware of, and now you're coming into town with Jim's Fitness. You're just going to get into a nasty legal battle. And so, God help you if the franchise company didn't trademark Jim's Fitness before they started using it locally, right? And even if they did, there's just going to be a battle kind of back and forth. So it was uncovered during this process that the name Next Level Fitness and Wellness, which was the previous franchise name, was too common. It was way too common. There's 11 Next Level Fitnesses in Philadelphia. There's 3 in Massachusetts. There's
2 in Boise.
Heck, there was one in the STS.
Yeah.
Who was getting my commission checks, by the way, from DotFit. So that's a whole other story. Colby. What's up, Colby, if you're listening to this? And
he needed the money.
No, exactly. He didn't give me the money. He offered me a steak dinner, actually, by the way.
Okay.
Like, no, I'll take the money actually instead of the steak dinner. But so once you do that, you have to find a name. And man, like, how many fitness names are taken right now, right? Like you want to use a benefit to you fitness or be well fitness. Like it's like, good luck with that, because there's in 2021, every Joe Schmo, like independent trainer and who has money, $500 for like an LLC, is like like incorporating all these names and stuff like that. So you have to do extensive research. And by the way, the best level of research to get a name that nobody has is to, that's right, hire a lawyer, because you cannot go through this process without spending your entire freaking life savings on lawyers. So I ended up having to hire an IP firm to do our search for us, and they did. And what we uncovered was that we had to change the name, and so we did. We found so what I did after that, okay, so in case people are interested in this process, I'll take you through it very quickly. I went to my longest tenured members, and I said, this is what I'm doing, just so you know. You love it here. I love you. We have a great relationship. I want to franchise this concept. I want to give people an opportunity to own a concept like this. And I want to give people in the community an opportunity to work out at a place like this across the country. They were like, oh, cool, great. How can we help? I said, okay, I want to convene a group of you to help me with the rebranding process to figure out a name. So I took my longest tenured members. I put them on a panel and I presented a bunch of names to them. So before I went back and spent more money with the law firm, I had a panel of members who are already in my demographic, paying the money, who would be associated with the brand themselves, help me decide on a name for the new franchise, for the franchise brand name concept, right? And so we went through a bunch of iterations. Some of them were terrible. They liked some of them, but then Meld came. That one rang the most true. Once I defined it for them, they knew what it meant. When they were like, oh, I like the thought of going to something with one name, right? One word, right? That kind of rang true to them. And these are people in my demographic. So I knew, like, if the people who are already members that have been here for over 18 months are spending the money here, like if they like this brand name, this brand concept, the likelihood of other people liking the concept is high too. So that's when only then did we have the law firm research Meld. and spent the money on the search for Meld. And then the bomb dropped.
What happened?
There was another company that wasn't named Meld, but it was a company with the name Melt, capital Melt. And the law firm, my IP firm was like, well, I don't know. Like, I was like, oh, crap. Because after all this time convening my members, all this time coming up with a name, we came up with one. And the law firm was like, not sure if it's going to work. And then I said, okay. I don't want to go through this process again. How about this? I said, what if I were to, and Melt is like this big company, like they create products for self-myofascial release, self-massage. You probably seen them, like the little melt balls and things like that. Awesome company. Headed, the CEO is Sue Hitzman. And I said to him, I said, okay, what if I got a letter of permission from a company to use the name Meld? And my lawyer, who I called, he's legally nihilistic, told me, he goes, well, there's probably like a 2% chance it works, but there's a 0% chance if you don't try it. So I said, okay. So I went online, I Googled, and I just started my research trying to find the CEO of Melt. I did everything I could to find her contact information, like everything, right? I came up with 3 possible emails. I put all of them in the BCC just in case I was emailing someone else. And I sent the email. I told her my story. I told her where I came from, how I started, what my goals were and everything. And I was like, this isn't going to work. Jim, 2 hours later, I got an email back from the CEO of Melt.
That's awesome.
She was just like, I totally support this. I have no problem letting you use the name, like allowing, you having the name Meld, like I'm not interested in blah, blah, blah. She asked me what I was doing. I explained it. She goes, it doesn't seem like it would conflict at all. Dude, it was freaking sick. So I went back to my lawyer and I forwarded him the email. He goes, no way. Like he still didn't believe it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love stories like that. Like you said, there was a 2% chance versus a 0% chance. So you took a chance. I was like,
so you're saying there's a chance. Remember that from Dumber and Dumber?
Yeah, that's right. 1 in a million. So, and then you had to get that name trademarked, right? So what's that process like?
So then I went back to my IP lawyer. And when you are in the situation where I was, you have to basically tell the USPTO, which is the United States Patent and Trademark Office, that, first and foremost, so when the search comes back, my law firm, I'm not sure how all law firms work, but they gave me like a 98-page report that looked like a traffic light. Like, you'll have less problems with this. These might pose a problem. This is a red, like no go. This is not going to work. When you apply for a trademark for a name, you go through you can do it yourself. Good luck with that. Because if you make a mistake, then there's an issue. It will get rejected. But the law firm submits an application on your behalf, like they did with me. It goes in front of an examiner for the USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office, who is an actual attorney. And so he or she is actually looking at the application and what else is on file, right? And so to see if it conflicts, to see if there's the primary, I believe, rule is there going to be confusion in the marketplace between brands? So like if I'm in the fitness business and you're in the fitness business and I'm like, okay, you're Catalyst, you're Catalyst. I'm like, okay, I'm Catalyst training, performance, nutrition, and, track, right? Like just because I add the word track to the end of mine, like it doesn't make it a different brand. And that's a misconception, I think. This is like a super golden nugget education point. Like adding a name to or a word that you think is going to differentiate you because in your head, your training program is different. That doesn't mean a hill of beans to an examiner.
Right.
It's going to get rejected. They're going to be like, nope, same thing.
Yeah.
And so it goes through a review process. So you have to submit So for us, we submitted 2 trademarks. Um, one on the word mark Meld, right? So like the word, the name for the business, and one on the logo in all colors, so that we have all that protection, right? So you want to trademark the actual physical name itself in its written form for your industry, and then you want to also trademark the logo associated with that word mark for the industry as well. So they go together, right?
Okay.
And those having those trademarks when you start to sell franchises, like let's say you get up to 50, 60 locations, then the brand becomes more valuable. So now when you're selling you talk about selling your business, or just getting, not even selling your business, just getting a valuation for your business. They're not going to just look at the physical locations and how many franchises you have and things like that. They're going to look at your logo. Like, how much is this logo net worth? Well, your logo was worth 50 locations times whatever revenue that each individual franchisee is getting, plus whatever revenue the franchise company is getting, right? So like there's another level of valuation there, right? It's like,
yeah,
you're actually building a solid brand that's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, like the Starbucks logo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So now you've got all of your paperwork, you've
Mhm.
got a proven concept, you've got your name, your trademark, your rebranding. What happens next? So now you have everything ready. You're ready to sell. So
Right.
how do you do that?
Yeah. So that is like a whole, man, this is, franchising is a new business, bro. It's like, it's not selling training. Like, selling training is easy. Okay. It's not easy. It is easy because, there's clear evidence that you need to buy a training session from someone based off of what your life currently looks like, how you're feeling, and the fact that that can change within a couple weeks. You'll start feeling better. So like that's like an immediate thing. Selling a franchise is selling an opportunity to someone, right? That they haven't visualized yet. So they're a corporate lawyer, or they're in the army and about to delist. Um, they are a stay-at-home mom whose kids are now grown and out the house, but has a passion for fitness and does yoga on the weekends. Um, you now have to make a connection with someone to the purpose of owning a business. And that is a different level of both commitment financially and mentally, because a person is, unless they're self-funded, if they have to take out a loan, you're asking someone to take out a loan, an approximate cost of a house, right? Or a Rolls Royce or a Bentley brand, current model year. And you're asking them to roll that into um, the chance that they can make more money, on the back end, right? And so like you kind of have to help them work through that process. So we call it in franchising, they call it awarding a franchise versus selling a franchises. But and the reason why that's the case is because awarding a franchise is a 10-step process. We have a 10-step award process to get a person to become a franchise partner, is what we call them, instead of a franchisee. We want them to become a franchise partner because our franchise term is 10 years. So you want to be able to know that you want to have a cup of coffee with that person in 10 years, just like today. So who's the person coming in? Do they meet your characteristics? Do you think that they do well back in their hometown? You have to really analyze who this person is as a person, just as much as their financial stability. And they're doing the same thing for you. Like, is this person going to give me the support? Do I believe that this concept can be financially viable? Do I believe that I'm going to get enough support over the next 10 years where this person is going to have my back as a franchisee for the long term because they're interested in seeing me grow? And those things are so valuable for a franchisor to understand, but also from a franchisee's perspective for them to understand. So making that connection is very much like courting, right? It's slower. The sales cycle is slower for that because you have to really get to know each other. I mean, really get to know each other, because they're putting a lot of money on the line and you are putting your brand in someone else's hands that may not even be anywhere near you, and so there's you have to overcome trust, issues with trust and things like that from the beginning.
Gotcha. Okay. So just out of curiosity, what's the average startup cost for your franchise?
So it's between 104,000 and about 160,000.
Okay. So
Yeah.
104 and 160. So most people like think of selling when I first thought of, until I talked to Rick, your white counterpart.
Wait a second. Am I the black Rick Mayo or is he the white Micah Logan?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I was talking to the white Micah. Good point. Good point. And for those of you guys that don't, we have an inside joke when we first met. When we first met, Micah found out that my father was African American, and he didn't believe me because nobody does, because I don't look biracial. But he was, in fact, African American. So
darker than me.
Right. Yes. And so my mom was like this porcelain Irish woman, which is why I wound up like this. So, but like when he found out, he's like, Wakanda, my brother from Wakanda.
So we had this whole. Did I text you the GIF? Did I text you the Chadwick Boseman GIF of him doing the Wakanda symbol? Yeah. It was awesome to find out. It's such a great story. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was talking to Rick about franchising, I'm thinking, okay, well, you're selling to trainers who want to open their own thing, but when you're talking that kind of money, then that takes you to a whole different demographic usually, correct?
Yeah, it does, because oftentimes you have to have both net worth and liquid capital as well. So we have, as an example, we have a net worth requirement of 100,000, which compared to a lot of the other fitness brands out there is not as much. Like, for instance, I know Orange Theory and some of their capital requirements are a lot higher, but also their ranges of investment are also a lot higher than ours. I think we have probably one of the lowest initial investments out of most fitness brands out there. Maybe we're at least 15% lower than the next closest, which may include a couple of brands. I'll spare the name for this podcast. But what I'll say, though, is that that's not always a trainer. Like, it may be a trainer who, like in your case, you were training for 20 years, right? But you have to get to that 20 years in order to have 50 grand in the bank and 100,000 net worth, which includes assets like real estate and stuff like that. You have to put the time in. For like a 5-year trainer, it's probably not likely that they're going to have 50 grand in the bank and a net worth of 100 grand. So then who are we talking about? We're talking about people who are in corporate jobs. We're talking about people who have had other careers. We're talking about individuals who are in the Army and have saved money, right? Like, if you know anything about anyone who's enlisted in the Army, a lot of these men and women have like a ton of like liquid cash because they don't really spend a dime, while they're in there, right? Everything's provided for them. So they just, all their money gets banked, so that's kind of, you're exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how Bobby Hines got started with Anytime. He took all of his money that he saved while he was in the military and bought it to that franchise. And
really?
I think he owns like, he maybe owned 4 or 5, maybe sold a couple, but that's how he got started with Anytime. Right. Was because I had him on the show after that meeting in Atlanta, and that's how he said he took all of his military money but he also like sold like cars. He sold everything to make that work. So wow. He really bootstrapped it, but he's doing well now. So
he's killing it now.
Yeah, he is. So now you're going to a different demographic. So where do you go? I mean, how do you market that? Where do you go to find those people?
Yeah. So that is interesting. So, okay. So you have an emerging franchisor like me. I'm entering a space like the white hot boutique fitness space. Unproven in the franchise world because we're brand new, and there's a million other concepts that are funded like a million times more than me, right? And I'm kind of chugging along here. So there are a few things you can do. So one of the things that we're leveraging right now is using franchise brokers. So almost just like you'd have a real estate broker who would transact, they would find a property for you, they bring it to you. Does this work for you? Then you decide. Franchise brokers typically have clients, right? So they have clients who they've nurtured who are looking for this opportunity. And so oftentimes what franchise brokers do is they show you multiple opportunities that may work for you. And so they lay them out in front of like one of their clients, and they're like, okay, well, I went from 20 brands to, if you think about franchise brands, it's like the supermarket, right? Like you can have a little of this, you can have a little of that, a little of this, and then you choose which one you want, right? There's like 15 cereals, you choose one in the middle. That's how they present it to their clients. There's like, okay, I know I want to be in fitness. Okay, great. Do you want to own a gym or do you want to own boutique? Okay, so I want to own boutique fitness. So all right, so you move the gym franchises out the way, and then you bring in the boutique fitness franchises. Okay, so now we're in the bucket of boutique fitness franchises. Let's lay these opportunities out and see what's available. And so that's when those FDDs come in, right? Like comparing each model and all this other stuff. So franchise brokers are a great resource in that particular case, because although their fees are super high, so the cost to get a qualified person who will ultimately be awarded a franchise is really, really high. So like in some cases, I'll pay like 20 grand for a franchisee who will open a Meld, right? But it's worth it because that person's a franchisee, right? So like, it's like, I wouldn't have normally had that person. Plus, this person is typically more highly qualified than other people. And if a franchise broker is bringing them to you, they've already run their financials. They have done the application. They've done all this stuff. And now, boom, here you have the person. Another option you can do is you can use social media, right? You have your franchise website. So like we have a franchise website. You can use social media and do ad spend, just like you would get leads for like clients in the studio. You would get leads for the opportunity from social media. The problem with that, again, the well-funded franchises are spending $250,000 a month on social media, right? Like all day, every day, $250,000, boom. Their marketing budgets are, whatever, $6 million a year, right? To get these franchisees. It's an insane thing. And then you can use like lead portals, like website portals, like a Franchise Gator that may pop up sometimes if you like Googling like a fitness brand or seeing what else is out there, something new. And those web portals they basically do the marketing for you. They bring the people in, but they charge you like $40 a lead. But oftentimes those leads are unqualified. And often in order to get to one legit candidate who is actually going to be awarded a franchise, you got to go through 500 of those leads at $40 a lead. So there's another 20,000 to get to one, right? So it can be very expensive.
Yeah, so and it sounds it sounds like it's a lot of money, but when you look at it like percentage wise, it's right on par, right?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Like you think about it, like so whether I pay 20,000 to a franchise gator or I pay 20,000 to a franchise broker, and to get one candidate who's going to be awarded a franchise, they are going to be a franchisee for 10 years, right? And we're going to have royalties for over 10 years. So like that, whatever they spend, whatever you spend, that 20,000 actually is going to turn into something completely different. And 10 years later, it's going to be worth whatever, 50 times that, right, over the life of a franchise agreement. So there's that. So we're primarily using franchise brokers, spending a little bit of money on social media for brand awareness, but mainly we're going through franchise brokers because they are bringing qualified people to you. And, it's stupid expensive to grow through franchise brokers at 20,000, a pop, but the reality is, once you build up you had a show before talking about growing at the rate of cash. So once you build up that cash reserve, when you get in those franchisees in, you want to grow the brand. You just apply that money back into the franchise and, just work on trying to get less leads from brokers and more leads from like social media. And you can kind of grow that way,
Yeah. So you don't have to pay the attorneys. Yeah. I like it, man. This has been very thorough. So why Meld? Why would anybody want to invest and become a franchise of Meld?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So because we have uncomplicated the fitness business, I believe. We have a very simple model. It is easy to follow, easy to operate, it's easy to run. You don't have to be very experienced in doing so. Our model is a 500 to 1,000 square foot model, and we built them so that there can be a smoothie bar inside as well. So like you literally have the opportunity for like four sources of revenue. You have your monthly membership revenue, you have the smoothie bar revenue, you have supplement sales, and you have ancillary revenue like beverage vessels or whatever the shirts, whatever the case is. So like there are very few fitness brands out there who have all four of those revenue abilities inside their concept. Never mind a 500 or 1,000 square foot concept. Yeah. Just on the square footage alone, Jim, you are saving so much money going with the Meld concept. Like, and one of the things that you and I both know is that during the pandemic, the fitness concepts that have gotten eaten alive are the ones that were square foot rich, right? Like overbuilt, square foot rich. They're, you know, it's costing them a ridiculous amount per square foot to operate. Not just that, their break even is 500, 600, 700 members. That's insane.
Yeah.
You know, that costs a lot of money to not just maintain that, but get new to replace the replacement cost of those members is so high. It's absurd, you know, where you can run a Meld studio with between 50 and 100 members and crush it.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot less members equal a lot less headaches.
Exactly. And
a lot less employees too. Staff cost is low, correct?
Man, you know it, man. Like, you know, maybe you should be the director of franchise development. No, so like, so that, no, you're absolutely right, because you can run these studios part-time, right? Like with part-time coaches, like you don't need full-time coaches, part-time coaches who can, you know, do well for themselves. They're on shifts, you know, so they're getting paid a flat wage. So your payroll cost is fixed. It's not variable really, unless there's like vacation coverage or sick time or something like that. But then in addition to that, you think about the smaller concept, kind of getting back to this, your per square foot, which you can do in revenue, is just, you can service it so much better. So your customer service levels automatically go up so much higher than everyone else's because you have fewer members to service. And if you only have 50 members of service, you only have 130 members of service. I mean, you can give people like Ritz-Carlton levels customer service, which means that they stay longer. Like our retention rates for members are something like, I don't know, 5 times higher or so than the industry average. Like they're ridiculous, but it's because we can service members like to a higher level because there's fewer of them to service. So it becomes like white glove, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And it's a lot more intimate. And I know we were talking before we started recording about how, because my studio is like 3,000 square feet, which is bigger than I want it to be, but that's what I have. But we've had the best month this month that we've had since COVID. Mm-hmm. And everybody, I wouldn't say everybody that's come in hasn't done anything since COVID, but the overwhelming majority of people that come in, they say, I wanted to come in here because of the size, meaning it was smaller than the gym that they were going to previous to COVID. So I think there's that awareness in people's mind too. So if you're going to a 500,000 square foot box versus a big box gym that may be 20, 30,000 square feet or bigger, you know? And so that's just less traffic, you know, less exposure, all of those things, higher level service. So I agree with you on the model for sure.
So what is my twin Rick Mayo say all the time, right? He always talks about Wayne Gretzky. You got to skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is, right? That's kind of how you have to operate your business. And so this is what Meld is. And I don't know, maybe we're a couple years ahead, even 2 more years further down the road than where the fitness industry is. This is, make no mistake, this is where the fitness industry is going. Smaller facilities, that are easy to operate, that have multiple streams of revenue, that are super efficient. And that's where we are. And I think that what a franchisee is getting with us is they are getting the future of fitness in advance. They're getting it in a model that's already been proven and that can work in their town. And you don't need that many members to operate it. And compared to the local one-on-one training cost in their area, they're getting it even better. And the members they're getting so much value for what they're paying.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with you on all fronts, man. You're preaching to the choir. Amen. So I would be remiss if I let you go without mentioning your podcast. You're a baller, man. So you got your podcast, the Common Sense Podcast. You want to give that a quick shout out?
Yeah, so I am the host of the Common Sense Podcast, the Common Sense Show. Jim has been a guest, and he's going to be a guest again coming up a future episode. And so I wanted to do something that was not just there are fitness podcasts out there, there are business podcasts out there, but there are very few small business podcasts, right? Like growing past your first 200 grand in revenue, growing past 200, 300 grand in revenue. Like no one kind of targets that area, right? So when I started the podcast, I'm like, I want to start a podcast to help people grow from like 50, 60, 70,000 as a single person, like small business, which is 90% of the small business in the US, to like past their first couple 100,000 in revenue, right? Like that is a good place to be for resiliency in small business, especially coming out of COVID and everything that just happened. So the podcast is directly related to that, growing past your first 200,000 in revenue. I address everything on that podcast. So we like small business. We talk about the whole grand scheme, right? Marketing, branding. We talk about resources to use, where you can get resources. We have conversations with people like you, like who are experts in specific areas, whether that be like marketing, branding, SEO, things like that. Plus, we can bring in people who are business owners to kind of share their experience and why they did what they do and how they're doing it, to give people ideas. And like, if you're part of a mastermind that actually involves multiple industries, it is amazing what you can learn from like the plumbing industry or the electrical industry, or like, like finance and stuff like that. In fact, we got our idea for how we do our assessments in the fitness in the Meld studios from a friend of mine and a former client who actually owns real estate funds, and how they do their investing, investors newsletters. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, your counterpart Rick Mayo talks about that too. How he is part of a mastermind group that has other businesses, not just the fitness business, and how he can kind of cherry pick, certain practices out that may work in this specific industry. Yeah, so I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, it is. So I think that gives small business owners like a more well-rounded way to like inform themselves about how business works, like reading books like Clockwork, I'm sure you've talked about that, and the blue light measurement. So I'll pick out like strategies from there, like one single strategy from a book, as opposed to like some people like lay out the whole book. I like to lay out like a single strategy in a book or something like that to really nail down on it. Like, I have an episode that just came out called the blue light measurement that's about organizational efficiency. And it is it's not a unique idea, but it's an important idea for small business. Like, as you know, like you can't have your trainer be the one who's cleaning toilets and this and that, like they have to do what they're good at, and you have to make it so that they do what they're good at. And that's your job as a business owner,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We had I had another guest on not too long ago that was talking about the blue light measurement, because he was telling us about the book and how it has to do with the welding. And that's really where the rubber hits the road, where they do the welding. So you wanted more welding and less, of the other stuff. So yeah, that's a good point. And I would love to have you back on to talk about business, man, because this has been great, man. It's been fun for me because we haven't seen each other in a while because of COVID, you know, and I haven't really talked to you except maybe on a Clubhouse, you know, for 2 seconds.
That was fun. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But you connected me with Amanda Goolsby, and so like she dropped me a I was supposed to have her on my podcast. I think we missed each other, but then she just like I think like a couple weeks ago she dropped me a direct message on Instagram, you know, like a voice message on Instagram, like, oh, like how did you blah blah blah, and like, and I don't think she remembered who I was, but dude, she killed that was one of my favorite episodes of yours ever, dude. Like, you know, like I think you and I nerd out about business, which is why we talk so much about it. But like, the episode about pre-sales was freaking like, if a person is listening to this and they're opening a second location or first location, holy smokes, that was probably one of the most impactful episodes I have ever heard on any podcast about business, because it was so drilled down about what to do and how to do it. Like, man, that one was, I just wanted to tell you, that was killer, man. I literally have that saved, and I have notes from that, like, you know, and we're implementing some of those things in our franchise stuff, right? Because it's killer, man. That stuff was great.
Well, I love it when I hear feedback like that, because that's the whole reason I do the show. That's why you do what you do. That's why I do what I do. And Amanda Goolsby was, she was in charge of pre-sales for Orange Theory, and they don't open a studio with any less than 500 members. So that's a big undertaking on a pre-sale. And then another fun fact about Amanda, I don't know if you follow her on social media, but now she moved to Tulum, Mexico, and she lives there. And I don't know if you've ever been to Tulum, but it's like California in the 70s. Wow. It's wild. It's pretty cool though. It really is. So that's a fun fact about Amanda, but I'm glad you enjoyed that episode. Well, man, where can people reach out, get more information about the franchise, about you, if they got questions, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So if you're interested in me, I don't know why you would be. You can go to my personal website. So Micah-Logan.com, MICAH-LOGAN.com. If you're interested in my franchise, you can go to Meld, MELD, franchise.com. That's Meld, MELD, franchise.com. If you're interested in seeing our local operation, you can go to meldfitness.com, meldfitness.com. And if you know, I'm always willing to chat about business, you know, like to me, just chatting about business is fun. So you can always send me an email, Micah@Micah-Logan.com. And we can talk, you know.
Okay. Awesome. And all those links will be in the show notes. Go to trainerjim.net, click on this episode of the podcast, and the links to contact Micah or find more about Meld will be right there. Micah, as always, man, it's a good catching up to you. And it's been fun for me to see the evolution. You've changed. You've grown a lot since the last time I've talked to you. So really? Kudos to you. Yes, you have. Yeah, I notice it. You probably don't notice it because you see yourself out every day, but I hadn't seen her really talk to you in a while. Yeah, you've evolved. So good job, man. Keep going.
Yeah. Thanks, bro. Thanks. All right. Appreciate it. All right. Part of that I think is not holding back. I think I was nervous for whatever reason. You get just as much as nervous with success as you do with failure. And people don't really understand that. I don't think fully, and I think that was a large part of my issue was that I was so apprehensive to just because I didn't think I had anything to add to the conversation. I think that was part of it. Imposter syndrome. So yes, exactly. Well, you definitely have a lot to add tonight or today. So, man, have a good rest of your day, and I'm sure I'm going to talk to you soon. All right, brother. You too. Good being in the boardroom with you. I like that background. Yes, I like yours too. Can I buy a t-shirt? Yes. All right, man. Take care, man. I'll talk to you later. All right. Bye now.